Hey, welcome to Fire Engineering's Humpday Hangout and to our show, Issues and Challenges in Today's Fire Service. I'm Chief Rick Lasky, along with, he's on the road in the car and the buggy, my very good friend and Humpday Hangout co-host, Louisville Assistant Chief Terry McGrath. And we've got another very special show lined up for you today. Reminder, as always, if you have any questions, jump on Twitter and send them our way. Just make sure you add hashtag FETalk, FETalk. If you would, please. Today, Terry and I chose as a topic in light of already the recent events of January and prior to regarding some horrible events for our law enforcement family. We chose the topic supporting our law enforcement family relationships that matter. And we're hanging out with some incredible guests. And I'm just going to kind of go around and give you a brief little bio about each one of our guests. First of all, we have Sheriff Brian Beavers from Kaufman County, Texas. Sheriff Beavers is a fourth-generation Kaufman County resident. He received his basic peace officer license in 1990, and for the past 18 years has been employed with Kaufman County by the Kaufman County Sheriff's Department, where he served as chief deputy and in 2016 was elected to sheriff. Brian joined also the Kemp Volunteer Fire Department in 1983, right next to one of our other guests. He is still an active member. He retired as fire chief in 2017, but still active. Brian has served as a guest instructor at the Texas A&M Fire School, and Chris will like that, the Texas A&M Fire School, for the past 20 years, as well as a guest instructor for other volunteer fire departments. Welcome, Sheriff.
Thank you very much. I greatly appreciate the invite.
We're excited that you're here, boss. And then the next guest is Captain Jesse Hunter from the Louisville Police Department in Texas. Captain Jesse Hunter has served with the Louisville Police Department for the past 17 years. He also served proudly for 10 years with the United States Army. I wanted to say this about Jesse. We've always had a great relationship with him. You know, when you travel like I do and you're away doing things, or you're at a fire in the middle of the night, 3:30 in the morning, your family's at home, there's nothing that makes you feel better when you get a text message or a Facebook message to me and my wife saying, hey, just went by the house is good, you guys are secure. Miss Lasky, I know Chief's had a fire, but you're in good shape. And guys, I've always told people, selfishly living in Louisville, that my family sleeps well, has always slept well. My daughter, my son, and my wife, because we know you got guys out there for us all the time. So welcome, Jesse.
Thank you, Chief.
All right. Our next guest is Sergeant Chris Kemp. Chris just celebrated 24 years with the Louisville Police Department. Chris hired on with Louisville as a jailer in 1995 and was hired as a police officer in 1996, and has served in directed patrol unit as a property detective and was promoted to sergeant in 2007. He has served the last 9 years in CID over crimes against persons, children, family violence, crime scene, and victims advocate, and he is a TCLO certified instructor. Chris joined the department in 2006, where he serves as a safety officer, giving back to his community, and for the past 5 years has been teaching ground ladders for the Teaks Municipal Fire School at Texas A&M, Brakeney Field. And our last guest, last but absolutely not least, if you saw how big he was, you make sure that was the case, is Patrol Officer Butch Steinle from Louisville. He's been with Louisville about 15 years. He is born and raised in Casper, Wyoming. I was just there. That's absolutely beautiful country. Attended the University of Sioux Falls in South Dakota, where he played football and graduated with a Bachelor of Arts in Criminal Justice and a double major with Sociology. He worked as a correctional officer for nearly 2 years before transitioning to the Louisville Police Department, where he's been assigned to the Patrol Division and SWAT unit. He's a field training officer, and with SWAT, he's assigned to the entry team and gas team. He's a TCLO instructor, a critical incident stress management coordinator, and I'll say this because I know good folks don't like kind of talking about themselves, but I'll say it. He received a Medal of Valor in 2015 for an officer-involved shooting, and the CIS team developed as a result. Like I said, firefighters and police officers I know never talk about accolades and medals and awards because they're great people. They just love what they do. But I want to make sure I mention that in this show. So welcome, guys. Welcome, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And hey, Terry, I said this. I got to throw a shout out to my wife, Jamie, and to her coworkers and deputies and sheriffs with the Wichita County, Texas Sheriff's Office. She loves working there, and she's got some great people that she gets the opportunity to work with. So before we really kick things off, folks, and to our viewers, we just want to take a moment. Remember those in law enforcement. It has just been a cruddy, you could put whatever words you want, month already for our law enforcement family all over the country. I know North Richland Hills had a close call. Their K-9 got shot. Arlington, an officer in Texas. Illinois State Trooper in Illinois. If you listen to superintendent, he was a typical trooper as he was on his way home off duty and pulled over for an accident on I-294, the toll road, to blocking to protect lives. It's snowing and got struck by a car. We lost him. It's just been horrible. So please, everybody, keep them and especially keep their families in your thoughts and prayers, because very few besides obviously our family and friends in the military, when it comes to law enforcement, fire, put it all out there. So, hey, let me do this. Let me throw this to Sheriff Beavers first. I guess we'll go around the table here. What attracted you to law enforcement, Sheriff?
Well, I guess when I started in the fire service in '83, getting involved in that and start being interacting with law enforcement troopers and stuff like that, I started riding out with some troopers. Then I decided to go into law enforcement and got into it, started my way from dispatch to jail, all the way out to patrol, and now sheriff.
Well, once you get in it, once you get into public safety, I think you're hooked. It's like up in Chicago, it's like the mafia. You can't get out of it once you're in it. It's one of those things. Terry, I know, Terry, you served in both Louisville and Dallas as a police officer. Your brother's still in a job in Dallas, right, T?
Yes, sir. He graduated the academy, went to North Central Patrol, and he's a detective in North Central Patrol. But I always remind him that his job today consists of calling people and asking them if they know who stole their stuff. And when they say they don't, I'm sure he tells them, call me in a couple of weeks if you find that out. But yeah, he's probably a year or so away from retiring.
Well, for our listeners, you already know Terry's my good buddy, my co-host, and Terry, served for me not only as one of our cause and origin arson investigators, but as my division chief over that division, and did an incredible job. And now he's got a great partner, Mark Richards, division chief over that division, that does a great job. So pretty cool. Captain Jesse Hutter. Jesse, what got you into law enforcement?
Well, Chief, when I was in high school, I was a part of a organization called PALS. That stands for Peer Assistance and Leadership Skills. What it was a bunch of upperclassmen that would travel to the middle school and the elementary schools. We would help with underprivileged children. They were having problems at home, or just were either shy or just didn't have friends. And usually, as low-income families, we were helping along the way. But that's what got my bug with wanting to help other people. So as I went off to college and started working at the jail, I decided that helping people was my thing, and so that's how law enforcement became my niche, if you want to say.
That's pretty cool. Pretty cool start. That's pretty awesome. My good buddy Chris, Sergeant Chris Kemp, what got you into it, buddy?
I was working at the mall as a security officer for a long time, and a couple of the officers from Louisville came out, and that was their main job, be out there during that time. They kept on saying, "Man, you just need to come on board with us. You got what it takes. You can do it. You can have fun." And I thought, there ain't no way I'm gonna get paid to get shot at. I mean, that's just crazy. And so I became a jailer. And then a good buddy of mine on the streets, we were jailer again. He goes, "Let's go take the test." I said, "Dude, I ain't gonna get paid to get shot at. Just not gonna do it." Anyway, here I am now, and it's a part about, I thought from the very beginning, it's about helping people for sure. So,
well, and like I said, it's like everybody's been talking already. The stories, I always find it fascinating. For me, I ask a lot of young firefighters, what attracted you to the fire service? Terry does it with all the applicants in Louisville. What got why'd you get into it? What did you have? You have a mom or dad who was a police officer, firefighter? Did you have a bad call or bad kid? Say the kid. Why did you get into it? It's always very interesting and pretty cool to hear the stories as to how. So Butch, Butch, I don't know how you didn't end up on the tower ladder, the truck company in Louisville, breaking through doors and. Oh my God! Well, you know what? We can make sure you're on the low. Terry can make sure you're on the low side of the tower ladder, where you just run through shit, through stuff. You can just run through walls, the door. So, so Butch, what got you into law enforcement?
Sir, I guess I'm one of the select few that it's something I've always wanted to do since I was a kid. I don't know why. I just grew up always wanting to be a police officer. And I wasn't sure what level I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to be in law enforcement. And so I just chose, I thought was the best path to get here, going to school, getting into the correctional facility in South Dakota, just doing everything I could to get to where I am to continue to build. So it's always just been something I've wanted.
Well, let me ask you this before we go. Actually, I'll save this because we want to talk today a little bit about PTSD and some of the stressors in law enforcement. Because, I'll mention again later, it's not normal for police officers, deputies, and firefighters to see what they see. And I'll throw this out to you guys. I want to throw this back to Sheriff Beavers. I guess my first question that Terry and I wanted to throw at you is, what do you say? This has just been, like I said, between you've got what happened just now. An officer got shot in North Cam where there was a fatality. Irving just had 2 motor officers. You saw the video. They stopped, who hit them, and it took off. And just, what do you say to your deputies, and you guys to your officers? I'll start with the sheriff first, to keep them. I mentioned this to the guy sheriff before he came out in Illinois. I was up there not too long ago, and we're talking with one of my state trooper friends, one of my guys from city of Chicago, and a couple of the municipal police officers. And it's all that conversation of, God, there's times I go, what the hell did I get myself involved in? Just like you said, Chris, I don't want to get shot at, but I've always said, if you guys don't, who's going to stand that wall for us? You know what I'm saying? Who's going to stand that post for us all the time? We don't put the phones on call 40 and take time off. Sheriff, what do you, especially lately, what have you said, or what would you say to your deputies to keep morale up? To, what I'm saying? You know where I'm going with this, because there's got to be something to go, what did I get myself into?
Oh yeah, I'm very fortunate. I'm not as big as Louisville. I have 252 employees, and 98 of them are sworn deputies. And I've got the luxury to go out here and try to stay late, see my night shift, see my day shift at least once a week, and just kind of motivate them, keep them moving, tell them what we're doing good, and just trying to make sure that they're safe and watching each other back, and going into certain situations to make sure that we're safe, not just to bail off like the old days we used to do. We'd run on up in there. Stay back, pay attention, listen to everything that's being told to you by our dispatchers, and watch your surroundings as we start moving in. But at the end of the day, we always want to err on the side of caution, and I want everybody to come home every day, every night.
Well, and you mentioned something, Terry knows this, and I know Jesse and Chris and Butch know this about me. I'm very partial to dispatch. When I served as a police officer, before getting hired full-time as a firefighter paramedic just outside Chicago, I was working the desk. I got shot through the windows of the police station. They pulled me off the street to work the desk, and it wasn't at me. It was at, the uniform. But you just mentioned something that's critical. I'm very partial to dispatch, and I always talk about, I get to do a lot of NINA classes for the dispatch groups, and talk about, I call them the silent heroes, like I talk about chaplains. Granted, they talk, but you don't see them in the newspapers. You don't see people pinning medals on them. But oh my God, they're so vital to your deputies to get you that information. I mean, that's the difference maker sometimes on a lot of calls, isn't it?
Yes, sir. Very, very much. The unsung heroes sitting back there gathering all that information. And I see it on the fire side too. It's important to give all that information out to us. And we're dispatchers are tough to keep these days. The state has changed them where they're licensed now in the state of Texas, and it is hard to maintain them and keep them and keep really good ones. But it's a revolving door that we're always trying to get that information out there, because the information they hold is very vital to first responders as a whole.
Oh, absolutely. The stressors, Terry, you and I've talked about this, Terry, for years, with you being the liaison for dispatch for the PD there. We've been very fortunate, T, where we've been able, when it comes to light duty, reassign, firefighters if they want to save their sick time for a off-duty injury where they could go work, or used to be able to. I don't know if it's still that way. work in dispatch as a call taker at this, and they get to see a whole different side, don't they, Terry?
Yeah, absolutely. But I go back to something the sheriff said just a minute ago, and which is it's refreshing to hear that. But he makes a conscious effort to get out and be with his people. And I think, and I've made the comment on this show before, when you sit in an office and do what I do all day, it's easy to get wrapped up in that, and it's easy to sit up there and operate in the confines of my safe, comfortable, temperature-controlled environment. But you've always got to remember the bulk of the services that you are providing are out there on the front line. So, Captain Hunter understands this, but I do think that's something that falls off. And when you get back to, this is a family, and you've got to make the effort to get out there. And so with dispatches the same way, with fire department dispatches, and here they're in a different building, and we don't have a day-to-day contact with them. We talk to them on the radio, but you oftentimes don't know who they are. You don't know anything about them. So I think it's important that you establish those relationships and do it in a fashion that they are a part of what you're doing, because they are a part of what you're doing.
Well, and exactly, and you guys know, and Sheriff, we just met, but a lot of the teachers I do, a lot of the Mayday training that I do, and a line of duty death investigations and near misses I do the investigations for. There are firefighters that are alive today because of dispatchers. There are things that we as incident commanders have missed on the fire ground. I could play. I can't tell you how many tapes I can play you of dispatchers. Keeping us. They have our back, and then sometimes just breaking the tension a little bit. I always tell, and my Louisville family might remember this. I'm the only fire chief I think that's ever established dam command, and we've got Lake Louisville, folks, where we've got a pretty long dam there, and on the downside where the Corps of Engineers properties, if you guys remember, once in a while we get the wildland fires there, and I got down there, and one of the BCs asked me to take command, so you take operations, and I was on what we call unofficially the dam road, so I established dam command. And remember Tanya Smith, God bless her, she was dispatching, and she wouldn't. I'd say Louisville from dam command, and she would go ahead, command. I said Louisville from dam command. She says, go ahead, command. And I said, Louisville from the, and she said I had the tape. She said on the radio, she said, Chief Lasky, I can't say that on the radio. And I replied, then you're spelling it wrong.
Right.
And she replied, the dam command from Louisville. She said later she felt like she was being naughty. But just those moments where there's the tension breakers, because it is, and again, it's a difference between, life and death for a lot of police officers and firefighters. Butch, let me ask you, you're out there, I mean, all you guys are out there doing it, but what do you say? You heard Chris's story about, come on, man, come on, join, put in your application. What do you do when it comes to people that come up to you and say, hey, I've always thought about being a police officer, or when you're looking, you see someone go, God, he or she would be a great officer. What do you say to kind of get them hooked into it, especially going on right now?
Well, some of them, I'm very enthusiastic about my job as it is. I love working here. I love being here. Some of it's kind of natural just to be encouraging. And like they're talking about, being just intentional about getting with these people and trying to walk them through processes. Everybody's intrigued about riding out with us, joining our Citizens Police Academy, want to know what a police officer does. Some of the new TV shows, Live PD and some of this other stuff, man, people are eating it up. They're loving it. They're always asking questions. You just sit down with them and tell your stories and spend a few moments. Just take time out of your day to spend time with them. It changes the culture. They love it. They want to hear about it. They support you because of it. It's just, there's a lot of naysayers out there that people are listening to, but the truth is we're getting more support now than we've ever got. And if you just spend a little time with them, it's incredible. And it's boosting me too, because I get to talk to good people that are motivated, that are supportive, that are good, contributors to society, so to speak. They want to be here. So it boosts me too, to remind me not to be too cynical, that not everybody's a crackhead, and there's some good positive interaction there, either side of the coin. So I enjoy those conversations.
Well, and Butch, I mentioned this before we went live. If you remember, we were to meet Marcus Luttrell. Marcus, Navy SEAL, his brother Morgan, and from Texas, survivor. A lot of people saw the movie. And Marcus and I have become pretty good friends. He helped my son. Before my son went in, my son served in the Navy as an FMF corpsman in the Army. Jesse, right, that'd be a combat medic, but I got corrected. Don't call them a combat medic unless they're with the Army. They're a corpsman. So, and Marcus helped him with some PTSD issues, but with some advice. That being said, I remember Marcus after the horrible tragedy in Dallas where that coward found those 5 officers, because I'll just say it, and it's me saying it, so there's no reflection on anybody else. It doesn't take bravery to do what some of those people do. They're cowards. Anyway, we had Tammy Kaya, the battalion chief from Dallas, on this show. Terry set that up for her. She lives in Louisville. She was the first new battalion chief on the scene. And then one of their snipers, 19-year snipers from the SWAT team. And I remember Marcus posting when we did the show, he posted, along the lines of, hang in there, we got your back, this and that. And he said, just remember for every one of them, there's hundreds of thousands of those that so, and it's easy. It's hard to, I know it. I loved being a police officer. I did both. My dad was a firefighter. I loved being a cop. And I'll throw this one to Chris before I got a question for Jesse. But Chris, how do you and the people that work for you, what do you do? I mean, when you see that crap, what I'm saying, this stuff, how do you keep your folks and yourself with a positive, what I'm saying? Because it's easy to fall into, like Butch said, that they're not all bad folks. There's a ton of great people out there that love you. And like I said, go to bed like I do every night, knowing that you got their backs. How do you deal with that stuff to keep a positive outlook?
I think the biggest part of that, Chief, is those guys got to remember, what about if that was your family member? Who would you want to do that investigation for you? Do you want the good guy or you want the guy that's halfway in it? So if they have that same mentality all the way through where they're actually thinking about, if this is my family, how would I want to run? And do I want this end point or do I want this end game? And they actually do what they're supposed to do. And some of these guys, they see the worst of the worst. They see everything from, one of the big ones when I first came in was the chainsaw murder, where a person got attacked with a chainsaw. And then you get another one it's a regular harassment case. They're all the same because you want them to do the same for your family as you would for that person there. So.
And it is. It's just, and we're very fortunate today for our viewers. I can say it, I won't say selfishly, but Kaufman County, the sheriff and his department in Louisville, you have 2 agencies that have great reputations. And I know, when you follow all the stuff on the city, like the chat, not the cities, but the other things, the gossip, social media thing. And for every one person that gets upset they got a ticket, there's a whole bunch of fire back at them about great things. And I actually think it's a shame we've waited to the past couple of years to post all the great things that you see. You see a video of a patrol officer playing basketball with a kid giving, it's like I used to say the thing, Jesse, about the flag. Why do we have to wait for 9/11 or that to start? Shouldn't we have them out all the time? It's kind of like, I think it's like I said, it's a shame that we waited so long to post those videos of, the great things police officers and, sheriff's deputies are doing out there. They've been doing it forever. But let me throw this at you, Jesse, before I forget. And being a captain, same question we asked the deputy. What do you say? I remember Chief Gawler, Assistant Chief Gawler. I remember you guys had a real bad wreck on 121 before it was the toll road down there by Rockbrook. And this family failed. Remember, they failed multiple fatality. And I know a lot of your officers were feeling pretty down. And I remember it was like a Sunday, I think. He came in at roll call. And I remember the talk was, look, the next time somebody's yelling at you because you wrote them a ticket, the next time somebody's in your face about because you did this, just think about if life had been different, you're saving someone's life. And I've said it, it's not a speeding ticket. We're keeping you alive. To fail to you. I mean, what if they had gotten cited for that earlier and said, well, I can't do that. You know what I'm saying? That he came in with a different outlook, I think, to kind of keep the officers motivated. What do you do as a captain, like your officers in Louisville, like we asked the sheriff, motivated still with everything going on?
You know, Chief, the phrase we use at Louisville is conscious compliance, and I think everybody uses that really. And what those guys are out doing writing tickets, they're looking for conscious compliance to the law. We want to make it a habit of them to follow the law, not a habit to violate the law. So if you can do some corrective action, which is what traffic officers do with citations, you just hope that they will follow that, you know, that path of following the rules instead of in a speeder or rolling stop signs or whatnot. As far as the roll calls and keeping people motivated, you said it a second ago, you know, on average, a patrol officer will get dispatched to 14, maybe 19, sometimes 20 calls a night in a 12-hour shift. And so see everybody's worst. You know, every one of those calls, somebody's in a crash. They've had something stolen, their whatever was damaged, or their loved one is missing, or their loved one assaulted them. You get some of the worst calls, you know, and you're forced to go to those calls because it's your job. And so what I would do with my patrol officers, I would encourage them in between those calls to go out and find a call where you can make a positive impact in somebody's life. And so at the end of the day, when you've had 14 or 15 calls that you've had negative interactions, hopefully you've been able to manage 1 or 2 positive interactions in between those calls, and you can call it a successful day. You do that every day, day in and day out. You're always chasing that high that a patrol officer gets with helping a family with a car seat or with their grocery bill, whatever the case may be.
I remember so many things that you know I've seen our folks in law enforcement do for families that you would never you were like I thought I didn't know they did that, you know, that kind of stuff. I'll say this, I'll say for the rest of my life that one of your detectives saved my daughter's life, and I'll say it till the day I die. I usually can't without getting a little emotional, but my daughter Emily went through a horrible bullying time in middle school. I mean, absolutely horrible. We had to get security cameras in the house. The stuff to have to sit down and watch my daughter on video get drugged to the floor and beaten. I know she could fight. I taught her. I know she could fight. But if it wasn't for Andrea, if it wasn't for one of your detectives to go sit down and coach her and talk about that, what it means to not provoke the difficulty. You know, don't provoke it. If you just walk away, I know it's hard. Just and the advice, and she really worked with her and taught her. And as angry as I was to watch that video, sit next to one of your officers, I was proud because she took the advice. And it's those little things that I think police officers don't ever realize, or quite often they should. That little glancing moment, what you do affects people's lives. You guys are, and I'm not trying to sound dramatic here. I'm being very blunt and honest. It's you change lives, you affect lives. It doesn't matter how big or small you are. You know that. Same thing in the fire service. You drop your guard one time, you're just as dead. You know, a bunch of us have been to the memorial for the fire side. I'm sure it's here the police side. And I said, so they don't have like a volunteer memorial and a career memorial and a big department, a small department. We've been to funerals, Chris, and Brian, for the chief in Teague, Texas, volunteer, you know, that got killed in a wall collapse. That's just as dead as the chief in New York sent. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't matter how big or small job it's dangerous no matter who you are. When I teach to Southlake, I go, you know, when I taught in Southlake, Texas, great group. Every year I get to do their leadership academy. I'm like, you know what? All we got to do is drive down here off of 114 to look at the memorial where Bonnie and Clyde shot 2 state troopers. And another, you know, just, you know, and granted, it was a long time ago, but it doesn't matter. You know, you've seen it, right? It doesn't matter where you're at, who you are, you know, big or small. You know, you can't let your guard down, you know. So
Chief,
go ahead, Terry.
Sorry. Hey, just to speak real quick to Captain Hunter's point, which, you know, I think is interesting, because I do believe it's a lot easier to hire the person that's going to come in and go to those 19 calls. I have a call for service. I'm going to go there and I'm going to provide whatever service is necessary. I'm going to mitigate the call. I'm going to go to my next call. There's nothing wrong with that. There truly is nothing wrong with that. And they are providing a service and they're doing what we ask them to do. But the game changer is to find the person that's employed in any of these career paths that looks for the opportunity to serve above and beyond that. So, you know, I'll brag a little bit about Butch because there's a story, and Butch can obviously tell it, where a lady called 911 and she was basically going to try to give her kids up. She's living in her car. She has lost hope in everything. The dispatcher, and I think it was Angela, Butch can confirm that, but between Butch and Angela, they took the time needed and went the extra mile. They provided a service way above what was expected of the police officer or the dispatcher, and absolutely changed and saved that, not just that person that called 911, but our kids as well. That is what I think those are the moments that make the career, and those are the moments that give you the fuel to keep going, to power you through all the nonsense and all the terrible stuff.
Well, and that's Chessa, you know, with the little old lady that used to call for the ambulance all the time, every time she fell out of her chair just because she wanted to see the firefighters, and her and a Louisville dispatcher stepping up, and Diana Fairchild she would adopted the senior citizen. I mean, you don't hear about those stories when it comes to going beyond what you think is a normal routine for a police officer or dispatcher. I want to ask the sheriff something. You know, you mentioned earlier about staying on your game and watching your back and everything else. Brian, how often do you have to remind your deputies to not let their guard down? You know what I'm saying? That, you know, not to wear it out, but how often do you sneak that in there in a conversation where it's, you know, got to watch yourself?
Yeah, in roll call, we're always asking our supervisor, we've got to always stay on guard and do that, because the sad part about law enforcement, they're targeting the uniform. So we never know, just sitting in a car, I mean, we've already seen it. They're just going to walk up and shoot you. So we've got to make sure, I mean, my guys going reports, I am big about telling them, hey, back off and get you a place where you can see around you writing these reports, because, you know, we don't ask them to come into the office anymore and type reports. We're doing it from an MTT in a car, and we're sitting there, and you can get occupied in that. So we're trying to get them where they need to pay attention and look, and we try to preach that every day. That's a big thing to try to make sure that we keep our guard up, and we've got to promote it every day, because if we don't, it's that one day that we're going to let it slide.
And that's usually exactly. That's usually what happens. I remember when I went through it just came out, it was called Street Survival. It was a street survival course, Tactics for Armed Encounters for Police Officers at Riverside, came out of California. I still have the original. It was a black book, and I first got it when I was 16. I couldn't wait to go through it when I actually got hired. And I was absolutely taken back by the pictures they showed. There were police officers who were killed, but it was little things like, you know, like we talked about creatures of habit on the fire service side. How many officers were so busy putting their speed loaders in their pockets, because that's what they do on the range, that someone was coming over and able to shoot them because they, you know, it's like we teach firefighters at the burn tower, you know, don't put out the fire. Well, they get out to an actual fire and they don't put out the fire because, you know, they're back in the training field. So you see sometimes those habits of, you know, I hate that word, but it's accurate, complacency that we could fall into, that trap once in a while. You know, Sergeant Kemp, Chris, same question, buddy. You know, what do you say to your Louisville, you know, officers to keep them dialed in? Because, you know, all of you, both, you know, the sheriff's department and yours has had some, you know, some close calls. What do you say to them to keep them on their game?
No, Chief, I guess the biggest part nowadays is it don't matter what division you're in. It don't matter whether you're a school resource officer or you're a patrol officer or you're an arson investigator or whatever else as far as law enforcement goes. You have to, like Chief or Sheriff Beaver says, you just got to keep your guard up to 100% of the time. And a lot of ways is my guys, I'll tell them to go back and review some of the footage that happened to the other officers who got shot or they got hurt or something else like that. If they don't do that, they don't continue to do that, then they get complacent. Like you said before, once you get complacent, you might as well get out of this job, because complacency don't have any part of this job.
And not just for you, for the people you work with even. I mean, more importantly, it's like, you know, I've said before, if you think you know everything, if you think you're beyond training, if you think you're beyond being, please, it's time to go buy a bass boat or something and move on, because, you know, if selfishly, let's worry about everybody else. If you don't care about yourself, to be engaged, to be, you know, complacency is just a fancy word for laziness in my book. And, you know, you've got to stay sharp, and you got to stay dialed in. I just had someone hit me and with a question, and this has to do, kind of shifting gears a little bit here with the whole PTSD side of things. I said before we went on, I'm blessed that Terry and I work for a boss, Chief Bobby Halton, with fire engineering. Bobby was in Albuquerque for a long time. That was his career, and came to Coppell's chief a little bit as the editor-in-chief of fire engineering, FDIC. He's a huge advocate for mental health awareness, where before, right, you were called weak. You were said you couldn't handle things. You know, when Gary and Jerry got killed in 1981, where I worked in our station, our counseling was at Vaughn's Tap at 65 and 65th and Central, a bar. And then when, you know, later on, you realize that's a horrible thing to do. And that, I guess, we've finally come to a point where it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to talk to someone, because it's not normal for a police officer and a firefighter to see what they see. I'll throw this maybe to Jesse first, and then maybe to Butch, because we talk about Butch's background a little bit. But how important is it nowadays that we stay proactive on the whole mental health awareness issue?
I think it's very important, Chief, and it's getting more and more important. And it's, I guess, the stats are being recorded more and more often. You know, last year, 2018, there were more officer involved, or more deaths by suicide by police officers than there were at the hands of either a crash or as a bad guy. So more officers are taking their lives than were killed in 2018. So it's very important. And sometimes you have an officer that goes through a traumatic call, or goes on a traumatic call, or has a traumatic investigation that can be affected, that you just don't know how deep they're affected until they reach out, unless we're proactive. And if we're proactively providing support, we're proactively looking out for our guys. If our first line leaders are looking out for their guys and making sure they're getting the support that they need, we'll be able to identify people in crisis, hopefully earlier than we have in the past.
Well, and Terry and I have talked about this before, that we finally got to a point where we're training brand new academy recruits about that end of things, and then it's okay. It's like years ago when we came up with the Save and Roll program, there was no Writ or Mayday, and we weren't teaching firefighter safety and survival in the academy. Now it's part of the academy, and now so many police academies and fire academies are actually with the brand new people, the probies, the recruits, the rookies, sitting down and say, look, we're going to talk today. This session is going to be about this, and kind of let's crush all the nonsense about being weak and all this other stuff, and say, look, you know what? It's okay. It's okay to, you know, I mean, it doesn't mean, I know so many people that heck, it's just a matter, sometimes you just need someone to talk to that's not in your deal there, you know. Butch, you obviously, you know, when it comes to the whole critical incident stress, you know, management, that whole other things, what's your thoughts on the importance of that, and kind of crushing? I'll say this, I'll just say, you're a big guy, you played football. A friend of mine, Butch Cobb, a very, 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 very big-time decorated Vietnam vet soldier, Jesse, retired from Jersey City, busy-ass department in New Jersey as a chief of operations at the fire department side. He was standing next to the Globe on 9/11 when it collapsed, the first tower, and it killed his dispatcher. They responded mutual aid, and he missed, and it sent him back to some issues he had from Vietnam. And I remember him saying, Butch, he had young officers coming up to him, because Butch is pretty, I'm telling you, he's a pretty cool dude. I mean, he's one of the bravest people I know, all right? And they were coming up to him going, I guess if it's okay and it was Butch Cobb, of all things, you know, if it's okay for Butch to go to counseling, then it's okay for me. And just him doing it and being an advocate for it, explaining it, knock down some walls. What do you see from your end as being proactive when it comes to you know, critical incident stress, you know, management?
You know, sir, it's vital. It's one of those things that inherently is a culture we understand. I know these two gentlemen right here will have my back in a gunfight all day. They will fight with me. They will die for me. They'll bleed alongside me. Now, the silent killers, the mental health aspect that we neglected for so many years, and I think it's phenomenal that people are starting to recognize that. 10 years ago, I wasn't a huge advocate because I was, you know, young, dumb, and motivated. And now, I get a little older, a little more seasoned, and just like your friend, I said, man, I need help too. This isn't something that I'm just going to push off on other people, but I'll lead the way, so to speak, and say, hey, this is a huge issue that destroys police officers' families. Obviously, when we talk, Captain Hunt talks about suicides and firemen and police both. That's a real thing, and that's going on outside of the 40 hours that we're putting here. And taking care of us enables us not only take care of each other, creates a culture where healthy people will go out into the community and we're thrust into the depravity of the community, and we'll treat them better. And inherently, it's just an all good thing. We want people. We want retention. You asked about how do we keep people motivated? How do we keep them here? How do we keep them driven? Well, first line defense is you keep them healthy. Let them know that they want to be here. They feel good about themselves. They're not struggling with, the PTSD. They're not struggling with the mental health aspects of things that are just neglected. It's got to start with a culture change. I'm tremendously blessed here at the city with fire department, police department, administration, all the way to city hall. Everybody in the city of Louisville is very supportive of this program. Chief McNeil, Chief Tittle, Chief McGrath, the gentleman with me, Captain Hunter, Chief Devo, Chief Kerbo. Everybody on this industry is not questioning anything. They're saying, Butch, what can we do to help? Human resources. Butch, how do we get involved? How do we get volunteers to help you out? What can we do for you? What can we do for the department? And some of the best advocates and the best guys I have on the team are my fire guys. And they inherently know a little bit about the brotherhood because they live together. They've done this. They've been there. And so I learned so much from them. Bringing them in as part of the team was probably the smartest thing that I could have ever done. It wasn't anything that I did. It just happened, and it was a phenomenal thing. I love my fire guys. We bring in dispatchers too because we understand, like you're talking about initially, how important they are and how devastating it is for them to hear something horrific over the phone and they never have closure. They hear the incident. They're giving CPR directions over the phone. They don't know if the person lived or died. They don't know anything. But just getting in there, giving them a little information, it builds community. It builds relationship. It helps you not take things at home, to home, back to your wife. Family's a little healthier. You're in turn a little healthier, and you can last a little longer.
Well, and you just mentioned dispatch. When I do my talks at the NENA conferences and the dispatch conferences, I say it all the time that I think it's a tragedy that we forget. I mean, you've heard those tapes. The one I go back to is the little girl that got chopped up with the prop at Lake Louisville. And one of the dispatchers, remember that tape? Oh my God, try to give CPR instructions. And the guy's like, he's looking in front of him and very bad, tragic trauma. And he's like, what, you want me to do what? And then you hear as his buddy's doing CPR, he starts praying out loud. It's like, and I said the other day, when I talk to people on dispatch, I said, I don't know if you've ever, and I talk about people when it comes to being a dispatcher, I said, they have the ability to breathe life back into a baby over the phone. And once in a while people go, what? I go, no, they can, it's like magic. They can breathe life back in. And people are like, is that an app for my phone? Or I'm like, no, it's not an app. They can actually, seriously, I can play you the tapes. Chris, you and I talked about at your awards banquet in Maybank, a crying baby, a crying child in the audience. When I do a talk, that's the last walk out at a graduation or something is someone's wife or grandma or whatever holding somebody's, dad hold the kid, and the kid starts to cry. A crying baby to us is a pretty cool thing, and some people kind of forget that. Because we forget about our dispatchers quite often. I'm glad you mentioned that, Butch. Let me throw something back to Sheriff Beavers, and I want to do with Chris something. And Terry's hanging in there in the car. That we've been doing great with that so far. Sheriff, you're the sheriff. You've been doing that for a long time, and you served as fire chief. You served on both. I know you're obviously an advocate when it comes to PTSD. Obviously, what do you say to your folks? I mean, over these years, it's had to, like me, drove you to a position where you realize just how important it is, and that it's not a weakness to be able to ask someone for help.
Yeah, and I think the big thing is, debriefing. We all go into this critical incident, debriefing and stuff. That's a big avenue that we see here, that anything that we deal with, we want to get everybody involved, sitting in the room, see how everybody's feeling, how they went through that incident, and including our dispatchers. That's the ones we forget a lot of, bringing everybody to the table, sitting around, and then that helps them a little bit to get down with it. But then after that, you've got to reach out as our leaders and supervisors, first line, just follow up with that person. These shifts are friends. They keep tight with each other. So that supervisor's got to keep following that individual and see how they're doing, and let us know when there's issues to help that individual. But, you know, as we tell them anytime, if you need mental health, anything going on, we've got to help you. I mean, it is big for us. We've got to help our deputies, everybody involved in first responders with their mental health issue. You know, you can't be ashamed of it at all. If you need help, you need to ask for it. And we're preaching that every day over here, and even at the fire departments. You know, there's no weakness in that.
Absolutely. And you know, I mention to people all the time, I said, so, you know, everybody's got an employee assistance program. They all have an EAP. I ask people in class, so where do you keep that phone number for the EAP? And they go, well, it's on the bulletin board, it's on the intranet, it's on the desk. And I always say, so why not your phone? You've got the phone number for the Chinese restaurant, for Angelo's Pizza. Why not for the EAP? And my point is, I said, if you really do some research, the majority of the time, you're going to need that phone number for you, a subordinate or a peer or a buddy. You're not going to be on duty. And you're going to be at home or in your car. You go, okay, well, you know, well, look, if I can, will you let me call for you, dude? Let me, don't hang up. Well, let me call the station and get the number, you know. And it's like, I just think that's one other thing. Terry, you remember, we had a bad run there. We had a car off into the lake with 7 occupants, 6 divers in the water, like within minutes, but still a poor outcome, 6-month to 32-year-old, and within the 6. We had the house fires, you know, with the 2 fatalities. And if you remember, I think you maybe have been in there, because I know you were chief then. It was one of the captains. I said, you know, we're going to need to go in and do this when it came to, you know, the diffusing. And he said, he's a pretty tough guy. He's one of my go-to captains at a truck company. He says, I don't need this stuff. I don't need to do this. I don't, you know, and he's going on. I'm not going in there. And he kind of made a little bit of threw a little fit in front of the guys. And I waited a little while, and I got him on the side by just, you know, I said, look, you're one of my go-to captains. I said, just you saying you don't need it tells me you need to talk to someone. But I need you to do me both a personal and professional favor. I need you to go back in there and tell your young guys, look, you know that, look, let me just say, that was just me running my mouth. This is I wish we had this 30 years ago when I started, you know. And I said, when you go in there and they open up and say, would anybody like to say anything or go for it? You know, talk about how it sucks to be, you know, that this went on. But God, do you think those young firefighters are ever going to ask for help after they saw what you just did? You know, that you know, just like you said, supervisors and the bosses that are watching these men and women, watching the men and women that are working for them, need to be advocates as well, or it's going to flop, or we're actually, you know, group others to go, I guess if Captain Hunnard said he doesn't need it, then I don't. You know what I'm saying? It's just, you know, and back to my point with Butch Cobb in Jersey City, when young guys are going, Butch says it, you know, I mean, it's got to be okay. So,
well, I think that's a very important, you know, it's a leadership thing. And so, you know, if you're not going to wear your seatbelt, then no one else is going to wear your seatbelt. If you're not going to wear you know, your ballistic vest, if you're not, I mean, you can set it, but that's absolutely your role as a supervisor of those people. I don't want you to make the decision of whether you think you need it or not, but I do need you to go in there and participate for that very reason. And I think that we enforce that in a lot of different areas in our business, and whether that be protective clothing or safety equipment, or, you know, the certain skills that we perform, that, you know, we're trying to build muscle memory. And this is no different. The muscle memory and the routine of it is that, and I feel like we're at that point, because I think that Butch and the team that he's assembled has done such a fantastic job, is that you know, the phone conversation in admin is not, should we get some people up there and get them in a room? It's, we're getting people up there and everybody's getting in a room. And I feel like the more we do it, not only do they get better at it, but everyone else feels a lot more comfortable with it.
Well, and Terry, you remember after the fire up there in Hopeless Prairie with the 2 fatalities, and it was a very stressful, horrific call. I think you remember 3:30 in the morning, I ordered back a whole shift and I sent everybody home. And I'm like, you know, after, you know, we did everything else, it's like, you know what, the rest of this shift, they're no good right now. You know, we haven't had one, let alone two kids die in a house fire in a little bit. And, you know, we had that ability. It's like all you first do, you're going home. And, you know, people say, what are you doing? I said, no, we're going to take care of you. We're going to do the whole critical distress thing. But at the same time, you know, some of you need to go home and hug your kids. You know, it's the end of the shift. You're going to go back at 4 in the morning. You're not going to bed. You know what I'm saying? And let's just call in relief a little bit early and buy you a couple extra hours to go. You know, those that need to talk to someone. I know all of you know this, and we're very fortunate where I've been my whole career to have great chaplains that you can turn to, the chaplains that we have that you can. There was nothing to ask Kenneth or Brother Benny to go, can you ride by, you know, take a ride by Station 3, and the guy's had another bad baby call, you know, and talk to him. So absolutely, you know, and we're this hour always flies by. It's great that it does, but Chris, I'll throw this Chris and then maybe Jesse. Let's the last part of the show here about the whole agencies working together. I love and Sheriff, I brag everywhere I go about the relationships I've had with our police departments. Not everybody has that relationship, unfortunately, across the country. Louisville, I tell people we get along so well with our police department, it's actually scary. You know, it's incredible how well we get along. I've enjoyed that great relationship. As for my first job as a fire chief in Coeur d'Alene, Dave Skates had 36 years. He was chief. We got along so well that Mayor would make us sit across from each other in the room during staff meetings because we just goofed and had a good time the whole time. And you know, we brought everybody. The Aryan Nation used to march there every year. It was a horrible, you know, the protest. We changed things. Dave and I changed things. We fed the police officers. They had to sit outside, and you know, because you have all these nasty people all around. And I'm talking everybody was involved in that. The protesters just as bad as the marchers. And Dave was awesome. You know, the years I had with Chief Kerbo in Louisville, and I'm sure, you know, Chief Devers is just as well. Patrick Arata, my partner in Trophy Club, where I was interim chief, retired DEA agent. What a great police chief. Chris and then Jesse. Those relationships. What do you do to continue those great relationships, or to even build them to make them stronger to that whole police fire thing?
I'm really lucky because not only do I have that great relationship here in Louisville, but also back in Maybank where I'm a firefighter with our police officer out there, along with our sheriff's department. My fire department out in Maybank is a sister city for Kemp, which is Sheriff Beaver's fire department as well. So he's a sheriff out there. We've got the police officers there. I mean, it's all worked together. The best thing I can take back from this department, from Louisville, is that it don't matter when you need somebody, they're going to be there. And that's for fire to police both ways. I can remember back when I first got promoted as sergeant, we had a Plano police officer who was killed in line of duty. And me and our Sergeant Lane at the time walked over to your Station 1 and says, hey, we've got this procession coming through Louisville. What can we do? I've never seen a group of people jump up and start getting things ready. And I've almost noticed, and we probably had one of the best moving memorials I've ever seen. And I actually used it in training to this day. Down at A&M, every time I'm a firefighter down there, but when I've talked to those guys down there, I say, hey, how well do y'all know y'all's police department? And you hear all different types of things. I said, you better start learning because they are the ones who are going to protect you. You're the ones who are going to protect them. And we got to push that more and more.
And it's great. I remember that with Wes, you know, Hardy, with the other officer we lost in Plano. And that was, well, and I'm like, well, I know what I would do. And it was just, God, it was so easy to pull that together because of that relationship that was already forged, you know, that we have each other's backs. You know, Jesse, you know, being a captain there, and deal with all the different, you know, areas as well you do. And I go back to when you were a patrol officer, way back when, you know, just the little things when I'm at a fire or we're out of time. You know, my wife, God, you know, it was just, you know, just out of the blue. And I know you don't do that just for us. That's not, you do that for a lot of people, but that's because you took it personal. Protecting people's lives was personal to you. Those relationships between police and fire were, I mean, it's because of that. It's because of people like yourself.
Well, Chief, there's not a better feeling than rolling down the alleyway of some residential neighborhood You happen to see the guy that can't sleep, and he's sitting in his garage with his garage door open, and you roll by there with your lights blacked out because you're looking for car burglars, and you round the corner there, and he's, the wooden fences in the back alleys, and it surprises him as much as it does you to see him there. And I used to have this thing I would do when I would see a resident in the back alleyway. I would look over at him, and they'd look at me, and I would just go like I was sneaking up on somebody. And that might happen once a month, maybe once every 6 months, but for that night, that man went to bed thinking that the Louisville Police Department was protecting his house. And that was a good feeling for me. So I just tried to, spread that wherever I could, if it was in a restaurant or if it was, in the middle of the night in a neighborhood. But for my family, my firefighter and fellow police officer families, I always made a couple of extra passes by their places. And I want them to know. And I don't know if you remember the air horn beeping. I don't remember what time of night it was, but I always hit the air horn for you and your guys. And I'm sure your neighbors really appreciated that. I'm surprised I didn't get any complaints. But
I remember when my daughter's softball team, when she was a senior, won the Texas 5A state championship, and they got that escort at 1:30 in the morning back into town with red lights and sirens, and oh my God, it just it's little things like that.
We woke the whole north side of Louisville up with that procession that night, I believe.
That was pretty cool. That was a pretty cool moment. I guess as we close things out here, and guys, when we're done, stay on. Well, when we go off air, we always say this to our guests: hang in there. We'll talk briefly after we go off the air. But last question, and we'll throw this to Butch, and then maybe Sheriff Beavers. What do you do nowadays to recruit new officers? I know people talk about they've seen the number. Some areas of the country, they've seen the numbers drop because people look at all the bad news. Whether it's parent pressure or whatever. And in other parts of the country, it's kind of like that whole 9/11 thing, Jesse, where people were signing up to be soldiers. Like, I want to go do something. I want to go make a difference. So I think I've seen both. But Butch, what are you saying to what are you guys doing to recruit? You know what I'm saying? Have you seen the numbers go down? Or are you, when you have the opportunity? I know you mentioned a little bit before, but to get the numbers going.
Absolutely. It's a difficult task because, again, the naysayers speak the loudest, right? So that's what people are seeing, and they don't know if they want to jump in and be a part of it. So being involved with them, getting out there and being a part of the community where they can speak and hear the truth about it, kind of see where you're going. These people that want to do this service job, whether it's a fireman, a police officer, a paramedic, they have an internal drive. It's there. It exists. Now we just have to cultivate it. We got to find those people, and we got to cultivate it. And we've done different things as far as we started recruiting from other departments, trying to pull other police officers, trying to do lateral transfers and some of those things. And so we get some experience on all levels of shifts too, which is pretty phenomenal. Kind of a new dynamic for our so to speak, rookie shift has now got some 5, 10, 15, even a 130-year officer, which is pretty awesome. And it creates a different dynamic. Those people are internally motivated. The people that you want, the people that we want to be here, want to be here. We just get involved with them, show them the avenue, show them the path, and just get them connected.
Very cool. Very, like I said, I've just seen it kind of on both sides, where some people are like, "Where do I go to fight crime? I want to make a difference," and like you said, though, Terry says it all the time. Terry, how many times have you said, because overseeing hiring there, when you're doing interviews and you could just tell we can teach people a skill or skills, but we can't teach them passion. And Terry, you've said that guys and gals in front of you that I know we've looked at each other in interviews going, can we hire them right now? I mean, like right now. I mean, you've seen that too, right, T?
Oh yeah. I think that, it's refreshing, especially if you hire a lot of people, but it's the people that come through that maybe you sense it in the interview process, but certainly within a couple of months, you watch them work, you just kind of watch their interaction, and you kind of understand, like, that person's got it. That person is the real deal. And they've gravitated to something that they are really going to be great at.
It's like I said, I've said before, it's all about passion. Guys, Terry and I can't, and I know Terry was kind of he actually did really good in the car. We were kind of worried about signal and stuff like that. It worked out pretty good. We got to remember that one for some other folks, but we can't thank, for our viewers, if you're dialed in, we've had a great show with some great guests. We've had Sheriff Brian Beavers of the Kaufman County Sheriff's Office in Texas, an exemplary sheriff's office, and for you fire folks, he's one of us too. We've had Captain Jesse Hunter from Louisville PD, Sergeant Chris Kemp, and Patrol Officer Butch Stanley. And guys, thank you so much for what you do, for taking care of family. You guys are pretty awesome. And coming from the fire side, I know I served on the law enforcement side. Truly blessed to have you in our lives, and thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
Perfect. Terry, any parting shots there, buddy?
No, I appreciate it. I should have said this at the beginning. In the interest of full disclosure, I'm not driving. I'm sitting in the back. Especially those cops. They're probably sitting over there right now, like, waiting for me to get back. So they but Butch, fear not, Kevin Whitley's driving. And so every time he hits a bump, he looks at me and laughs because I know he's doing it on purpose. So.
I'm sorry, that is just.
I enjoyed it as always, but appreciate y'all's time. Appreciate what you do, and more than anything, I appreciate the cooperation and the camaraderie that we share from police to fire. I don't want to say it's unusual because I hope that most departments get to enjoy that, but I certainly think what we have and have had for a long time is second to none.
Well, and Terry, I think like a lot of people said already today, comes down to the leadership. And if the bosses, those in the supervisor position, those bosses, if they want it to be that way, that's it. It'll be that way. And some people don't get that about, you can't, up. It only goes downhill. And at the same time, you either tell your people it's going to work this way and we're going to get along, or, I've asked you before, so what have you done to fix it? Well, no. Well, you can make it happen if you want. So great thing, guys. Thank you so much again. Don't disconnect till we finish up, or we'll talk afterwards, folks. That closes things out for us today. We're all on Facebook and Twitter and the web, so give us a shout. You can get a hold of us there if you need to. Terry, and our next show will be February 20th. You can always catch some great shows here Wednesdays at noon Central Time. Some Humpday Hangouts. Remember, all the radio shows at night. You catch me and my buddy Chief Salka with our radio show, The Command Post. In closing, and Terry and I, we run this one quite a bit. We'd like to ask you to please keep the men and women serving our law enforcement family in your thoughts and prayers. And remember, never forgetting means never forgetting. Be safe and God bless. Thank you, folks.